everyone. Good morning. Happy Sunday. Welcome to the garden. Please, when you jump on, be sure to say hi. And if you have questions, ask away. We're here to spend, a good 20 minutes with you guys, showing off the garden, talking about things that I'm running into. This helps me do a little bit of what I call visual journaling. I can look back at memories. I can look back at old YouTube posts and find out what kinds of things were happening in the last April. I can look back at how my garden has changed. I saw a memory come through from actually 2019, April of 2019. That's before I started doing these lives. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, my garden looks so different now than it did last year or 2 years ago. So different. So it's a lot of fun to be able to see that. And if you aren't able to catch these lives every Sunday, then a good place for you to catch them later recorded is actually on my YouTube channel. It's just Aislynn Campbell. And you can find it very easily. I hope you'll subscribe to that because that really helps me to be able to continue to do more and more public videos and things like that, and really feel like my time investment in even potentially doing other different types of educational public videos for the YouTube channel can be a little bit more of a return on investment. So I thank you guys so much for being here. I'm glad that you're here. Please be sure to ask lots of questions. And if you have any need for support in edible landscaping in your backyard, if you have some need for support on homesteading, whether it's on a small backyard area or even large acreage, please reach out to me. I want to help you out with that and lots of other things as well. Of course, the podcast launches tomorrow morning. That's Dinner Table Talks. If you don't have a podcast platform, you can go to dinnertabletalks.com. But if you already have a place that you like to listen to podcasts, just type in Dinner Table Talks, look for Joe and Aislynn's name, and you'll find us. And this next week's episode is really great because we are spending some time talking about Aislynn's overflow of abundance, farm to table dinners, all of that kind of stuff, and just how we use those delicious products.
How tequila makes your clothes fall off.
Tequila just never makes my clothes fall off. I promise you of that. All right. So let's spend some time today talking a little bit about, and I mentioned that I wanted to talk about mulch and energy, and then I also showed off a picture of some slime mold. So let's start with the slime mold or dog vomit mold, and that's what you see over here. Okay, so here, someone might see this and think, oh my God, I've got to kill it, I've got to spray it, I've got to do something to it. And generally speaking, slime mold, vomit mold like this really isn't a problem, but it is definitely an indicator. And the indicator is that there is enough water, enough moisture in this particular bed that I'm overwatering it.
It looks like an eruption.
Right, I know. It kind of is an interesting thing. So, and you can see over there on the ground, the little mushrooms over there. Do you see those? Mm-hmm. Okay, so those mushrooms over there are also an indicator. Now, mushrooms and mold and slime and all of those things are actually good things in our garden. Of course, there's certain types of mold that we get frustrated with.
Can I touch it?
I would prefer that you not touch it. And the reason that I prefer that you not touch it is because it actually spreads a little bit easier. It has pores, that's not the right word. Spores, that's the right word. It has spores, and those are the seeds that then spread, and then you actually just grow it in more places. Now, it's not unusual at all to grow this type of thing. I'm going to move over here because the sun is really in my face. It's not really that unusual at all for us to be able to see a lot of different types of molds and slime molds and fungus in our soil, especially when we use mulch. They do tend to grow on mulch. Now, about that particular issue, let's call it that, or situation, because I now have an indicator that I've got plenty of moisture in that soil, that's really important for my squash, because squash can become overwatered. Squash can carry lots of diseases and things when it's been overwatered, when you're watering, overhead watering. I don't really have any kind of system here in this particular backyard that allows me to be able to stop overhead watering. I'm hoping for more of that. I do have some systems already in place out at the farm, and I'm hoping for more of that. I'm hoping that Joe will really help me out with some of his
You're talking about
manly
drip
skills.
irrigation and like other
Yes.
ways to water besides just spraying with a spray.
Spraying with a water hose,
Yeah.
yes, because spraying with a water hose for this time of year, for the types of vegetables that we grow in this time of year, and in a general year, March, April, we are very, very wet. We're actually not very wet this year. We're actually more dry this year, which is good and bad. It's bad for germination of seeds. We're seeing some maybe slow germination of our seeds because the topsoil is really drying out very fast. But we're also seeing healthier tomatoes, healthier squash, healthier beans, healthier peppers. Everything is healthier right now because we're not dealing with as much of the fungi, the mold, all of that kind of stuff that is a pathogen that carries a disease or a virus that causes problems in the particular plants. That particular slime mold isn't a problem. If you want to get rid of it, don't spray more water because number one, like I mentioned with Joe touching it, the spores will just spread. And number two, the reason it's there is because there's already plenty of water there. And so the best thing you can do is just leave it alone. The sun is going to come in. You could actually see, let me show you again. That the sun is already starting to burn up some of this stuff around there. So it will burn up today and die out, and so you'll see that. Okay, so mulch and energy and growing all of these types of things. The reason that stuff grows really well in the mulch is because mulch is carbon. We all know the word carbon now, not because we understand carbon seclusion, which is what regenerative agriculture, permaculture, hugelculture folks talk about. Not because we understand the need for carbon in order to make gasoline, in order to run our cars, but we understand the word carbon because we are all on a no-carb diet, or we're on no carbs, low carb, eat less carb, carb, right? Okay, so this is my point where I get to just bring it all in and go, it's all about energy. Every single bit of it is all about energy. And the reason it becomes a problem with the human body is because we have too much energy sometimes. We're not using up all of the energy. And our lack of energy that we feel comes from other places in our body, comes from other mental things, comes from other diseases that we have, comes from other situations. And oftentimes things feed on, not often, always, things feed on energy. Sugar, carb, carbon, energy. It's all energy. That's what it is, right? And so even dis-ease within our own system can feed on carbon, or will feed on carbon. And that's the same thing that happens in your garden. It's the same thing when you're talking about pests, pathogens, healthy mycorrhizal fungi, the earthworms, the healthy nematodes, the horned unhappy nematodes. Everybody eats on energy, and that's why we have to put it into our gardens. Now, one of the things about clay soil that is a problem, and sand soil, which is what we're dealing with most of in our region of Zone 9 in South Texas, we're mostly dealing with clay soil and sandy soil, which means in clay soil, we don't have an infiltration, we don't have integration of carbon and energy into the soil. And in sand, we actually have a loss of it. So it just washes away. So the thing that we can do is kind of bring it all together. When we bring the sand and the clay together, they intermingle really nicely to make a nice composite, right? The mulch actually feeds everything, every bit of life in the soil so that everything has the energy it needs to be successful. And that's the reason why mulching in your garden is so important. And that's the reason why I wanted to specifically bring up the mold, because I think our first nature as humans is when something is different than what we know, it scares us, and we try to change it, kill it, end it, whatever that is.
Move back to the natural state that we do know and are very comfortable with.
Exactly. Change is coming. No change. We don't want to change. That's scary because we know this. We don't know that, but we know this. Okay? And so one of the biggest things that I would suggest to you as a gardener that's learning and learning from every single thing. Number one, I always talk about research, and that is when you hear me talking about something, oftentimes it's because I have dug deeper into something to get a better understanding of it. There's nothing I'm going to know, there's no way I'm going to be able to know everything. So I'm just learning about it. I'm learning about how to grow new vegetables. Brussels sprouts is one of the big ones this year. Celery, you've heard me talk about that. I'm learning about diseases. I'm learning about pathogens in the soil. I'm learning about all of those things. I'm learning different pests. I'm learning different beneficial insects. And because I'm learning, I don't have enough knowledge to go through my garden killing everything because I don't know what I'm killing that's good. And so, and the other thing is, and this is one that I've learned a little bit more about this year, and that is about dandelions. Now, dandelions are actually an edible medicinal plant. So you can use the flowers for edible, beautiful purposes. You can eat the leaves. They're medicinal. They're healthy. A lot of different types of people that keep the lizard dragon type animals and things like that. They love to have the dandelions. But dandelions are actually an indicator as well. Now, I've mentioned to you that aphids are an indicator. Aphids are an indicator of an imbalance of fertilizer, an imbalance of nitrogen fertilizer specifically. Now, dandelions can be an indicator of an imbalance of calcium. And one of the things that I have also begun learning about is the idea over the years that our weeds are indicators. They're very specifically there to do a very specific job and to help us out with a specific thing. Now, a lot of times, a plant that has a really, really deep taproot, so when you pull a plant out of the ground, it's got one major root. Now, if that major root is really, really, really thick, like it is in most trees, it will tap in really strong to the ground and stay secure in the ground. But a lot of those particular plants, taproots, have a goal to get deeper into the earth so that they can pull or mine, just like a human mines minerals from the soil or from the earth, so do plants. And so what a dandelion is doing is helping to balance out the deficiency in calcium. That can be a reason why the dandelions are there. And so what it's trying to do is go deeper into the earth to find calcium and pull the calcium up out of the earth and then bring it up for the plants at the top. So one of the things that you can do with your dandelions, if you're not going to be using them for edible or medicinal purposes in your own home or feeding them to your animals, is just simply chop and drop. And there's actually a lot of things out there that we can chop and drop. And one of the things that I like best about the way that I garden and the people that I follow in terms of other folks that you could find on YouTube and stuff like that, is those of us that are intuitively investigating and learning from the things that we're doing rather than just going through and wiping it all out in order to just start over again every year, whatever it is you're wiping it out with. So, Joe, did you have some questions on there? Because I noticed you're, nope, we're good?
No, I just want you to get a better background.
Oh. Well, well then let's walk over to the other parts of the garden. While we're walking, just take a look around as you can begin to see all of the different flowers that are popping out. You can see all of my indigo spire that is really coming out. Now, this is a, I'm not looking, I don't have the right word. Malformation is not the right word, but
mutation.
A mutation, maybe, I don't know if that's even the right word. But what happened here was that this was the original plant. The indigo spire looked like this. I planted one plant here. It reseeded, regrew, but one year it had one particular mutation, one seed that came up with a white flower rather than the indigo flower. And now, after the freeze and everything, when it reseeded and regrew, now I have a lot of that. So that's kind of a fun thing to look at in terms of experimenting and getting an idea of what happens with seeds when they shift on their own. So in the situation of like hybridization of seeds, when we're talking about using seeds for hybridization, creating new growth, creating new flower colors, all of that kind of thing, if for whatever reason someone was looking for specifically to have a white flowered indigo spire, they maybe even would name it something different. then they would take this particular seed. And so, or the other alternative to that, and what I'm talking about would be more of like a flower farm. The other indicator of that would be we need to make sure we kill this seed because we don't want this seed to come up anymore. We only want it to be the pure original indigo spire rather than something that hybridized into something completely different.
Tiffany asks, why is indigo spire good to have?
Indigo spire is loved by the hummingbirds. It is a very easy to grow pollinator plant. All of the different pollinators love it. But also it just grows really easily in our area. I would grow both the indigo spire and the red salvia, which I've done a million times, talked about quite a few times. The hummingbirds love red flowers even more than anything else, but they particularly like the smell of the indigo spire as well. You can see that lots of my flowers are starting to pop. All the different, this is, as you see the, oh, I have a blue bonnet over here, look. Look. I had other ones, but they kind of got stomped on because they're at the edge of the gardens, and so so all of my flowers are really starting to pop. I've shown this one off. Look at my wood bees. I got a question the other day about what types of bees. Now, this is actually a little wood bee here. I'll go down here so that you can look at the bees. So see this little guy right here? Oh, he doesn't like it. And they try to scare me sometimes. They kind of like try to go in my face because they get annoyed by me. But one of the things you haven't noticed is any honeybees. And that's the reason why I mentioned that it's going to be important this year for us to do a little bit of our own pollinating of our squash, because I think we're going to see a decrease in the number of honeybees and the specific bees that pollinate squash, because a lot of the bees, like the wood bee, doesn't actually pollinate the squash. So, but they do like to hang out in my garden. That's part of the reason why all of these flowers are here. It's part of the reason why I've left all those dandelions. I'm pretty excited. If you can see, let's see right here. This right here is a poppy, and it does have a poppy flower on it. So I'm expecting to see a poppy flower at some point. And I'm curious to know which seed actually made it, because I planted a ton of poppy seed flowers, and I really haven't seen any poppies. I did see one bright orange poppy at the farm the other day. So also you can see that all of our tomatoes are really starting to set. So I've got lots of tomatoes over here, lots of tomatoes all over the place. Also, the basil is really starting to come in. I took a lot of big leaves off of my basil yesterday. Now, one of the things that we are running into with this wind and the dryness that we're dealing with this year is we are having some challenges with germinating seeds. So just make sure that you're keeping everything watered at least once a day, if not twice a day. But that indicator tells me I'm probably watering in my garden too much, even though I'm still needing to keep my little small plants and seeds really done well. Now look at this beautiful flower here. This is a cutting snapdragon, as opposed to those down there that are just supposed to be for floral pretty. These are actually intended for a florist to cut. So once they grow really, really big, you could actually cut them out. Now, I don't know whether I'll do that because I don't know that I have enough of them to make a bouquet of snapdragons just yet. But it's a good start, and that was the deal that I was doing in terms of experimenting this year, trying things out, learning what things will draw new pollinators to my gardens, was just learning how to grow flowers, learning how to grow different types of flowers, things that I could use and things that my pollinators and my hummingbirds and other birds in my backyard could use as well.
Folks can go back in these videos and kind of see how you started this whole corner back here.
Yes.
But I'm going to tell you that when that freeze came, it really decimated this area. And how many weeks ago was that? Because my God, Aislynn, I have never seen any of your stuff look as, I mean, this is just so gorgeous back here. It's almost as if the freeze transformed this into a better production space, but that's probably not accurate. Well,
I think yes and no. I think that's part of it. It knocked out a lot of dead stuff. It knocked out a lot of things. And a lot of flowers and different types of things are going to do their most successful work whenever they've had a little bit of a freeze snap. And the reason is, when we talk about that energy concept again, is that they draw the energy, they draw the sugar, they draw the carbon in, and they hold on to it. Now that's why your kale, your cauliflower, broccoli, all that stuff actually will taste better after a freeze. But it also means that your plants are going to work basically, and I tell you this every time I try to do a talk or anytime I do anything like this, and that is that your flowers, your plants, are literally just trying to make babies when they make flowers. I mean, that's what they're doing. They're taking their most beautiful self, they're putting their genitals out for the world to see and smell and be a part of, and then they're gonna make seeds and make more babies. And so after a catastrophic event like a freeze or a hurricane or anything like that, you're going to see your trees, your flowers, everything has sucked all of the energy in, popped out beautiful flowers, and now it's going to make lots and lots of babies.
Amy asks, have you noticed all the prolifically blooming roses in town?
Yes. And here, that's, oh gosh. Okay. So if you live near, I think Amy actually does live kind of in the same part of the town that we live in. There has been on one of the drives that I drive on every day, I've been driving it for years and years and years, these little patches of, they're not native roses, but they're a rose that's pretty standard, lives pretty easily in our area, that kind of thing. And those plants have looked horrible for years. I mean, yeah, they've popped a few roses here and there, but they have really looked bad. And now all of a sudden, all the disease just got knocked back, and the flowers are just, and they are the most, every time I drive by, I want to stop and take pictures because these little sections of flowers. And so this goes back to the thing that I said, like, days before the freeze or right as the freeze was coming on. Don't look at these types of things and go, oh, it's going to be the worst. No, because we have not seen a freeze like that at the timing that it was, where it came right as we were about to enter into our true spring, that killed all those pathogens and all of those things. And so I think that that's the reason why even the trees, everything is just growing like crazy, beautiful flowers, things that hadn't flowered in years. People pointing out, oh my gosh, I had this massive bush in my backyard. I didn't even know it flowered, and now it's, flowering. And so I think that we're getting to see things in our part of Texas that maybe we haven't seen in a very long time because we had a cleanup. We had something that came in and cleaned things out. My salvia, my red salvia, was kind of diseased. It wasn't exactly the most healthy. And
hold on, babe, we can't hear you. Let me catch up.
That may be what you're talking about, Joe, when you say it looks better, it looks different. What you may be seeing is that it's just cleaner and it's got a lot less pathogens in it. And other things to keep in mind is that these trees didn't start putting their green on up here until very late. I mean, look, my pecan tree just barely starting to bloom. Normally, by this time, if we haven't been in a major freeze right at the beginning of our spring, then everything would have already been putting all its blooms, everything would have already been greening out, and this area wouldn't have gotten as much sun in the timing it got. So it got a good amount of sun when it was needing the sun, when the days were still a little bit short, but it wanted all the sun it could get so that it could grow really green and really fast. And also a lot of those pathogens were just wiped out. I mean, look how, you've been watching this, Joe, and some of you have been watching this, and you'll start to see it. I mean, I can already see it starting to set in right there, but you do have diseases that take over certain types of plants. Now, by the time, this is the thing, if you're a production grower, and there's reasons why they'll take out entire sections of gardens. Number one, it's because they're not going to spend enough time to reinvigorate the soil every season in order for the soil to be as healthy as it possibly can be. But the other thing about it is that if you reseed and let plants just keep growing, they just kind of keep passing on the same diseases over and over again, unless you do the deeper inner work to clean yourself out, just like this deeper inner work to clean the pathogens out of the soil or the disease out of the soil. Then you don't get into a situation where you have the healthiest version of whatever could potentially be growing. And so the fact is, that's what happened. We lost disease. We had longer sun in areas that we don't normally have longer sun. And we have plants that are innately goal towards growing more babies all the time.
You also had the death of the upper layers of the garden, which is putting sun down closer to the soil.
Yeah.
Because I guess you had mentioned that earlier.
Right. That's exactly what it is. There's a lot less shade back here.
I don't mind playing the role of the dumb gardener on this program, because I feel like some people don't ask questions.
How long does he get to say that, y'all? I'm just curious.
No, but I think it's important to repeat, because a lot of people are fearful of asking questions so that they don't appear dumb. I'll ask the dumb questions.
Yeah.
Like, for example, what from this garden area might be coming into the kitchen soon?
Well, lots and lots of greens still. And I have it a little bit different in this garden because I have a lot of shade available, and I've mentioned that a few weeks. So I'm still growing really beautiful broccoli and cauliflower and cabbage. If you've got spaces in your garden, or if you've got shade or anything like that, you can continue to keep growing different types of greens and things like that that other folks are, like out at my farm garden. Pretty much most of my broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, all that stuff, I'm pretty much cutting a lot of that stuff out.
We have a great cauliflower broccoli recipe on tomorrow's new episode of Dinner Table Talks.
Exactly. And you can see that, like, I'm cutting off the leaves. I mean, these leaves are amazing and gorgeous. I've got some of the biggest heads of broccoli and cauliflower and cabbage. I mean, look at the leaves on these things. And these are the little leaves. These are the ones that were left after I did a pretty big harvest yesterday of the massive leaves of things. Other things I think that are fun are, look at these snapdragons that are coming up everywhere. So now I have a reseeding of snapdragons, just like I have a reseeding of the Texas red salvia, you know?
There's an onion right there on your left hand. All right.
Yep. And so I think they're going to last a little bit longer too. I mean, come over here. I've got, now bachelor buttons are popping. These bachelor buttons were actually already in the ground before the freeze. So a lot of flowers last through the freeze. I've mentioned that in the last few weeks. They're starting to pop their beautiful flowers now. This stalk made it through the freeze. This snapdragon made it through the freeze. That snapdragon made it through the freeze. Look at this celery over here. And it's late. This is late for celery. It really is. But I've got a little bit of sun and some nice shade and plenty of moisture. And, you know, every season that you are in your garden, the longer you contribute to giving it the soil health that it needs, whether you deal with freezes, whether you deal with a long warm summer or a long warm winter, it doesn't really matter what the different things you're dealing with is. The longer you're here contributing to the health of your soil, the happier and healthier and less pests you will deal with. I talked a few weeks ago about aphids and managing my aphids here, and having a soil imbalance in here of nitrogen. And I'll tell you that this particular garden has settled that out by itself. I have a few aphids still, but they're nothing like they are at the farm. Now, my gardens at the farm are all very, very new, young gardens. And they all have brand new loads of cow manure, mulch, and fertilizer, and nitrogen in the soil. And so I've got a lot of work to do still out there to really get that stuff to the healthiest soil that I can actually make it. So, yeah.
Do you make your own mulch? What type do you recommend?
Mulch is mulch, in my opinion. You can do some research on that, but sometimes I think that the more research you do on certain things, that's analysis by paralysis. I get mulch from landscapers in town. I make relationships with different landscapers in town, and when they're in my neighborhood and they've got a nice load or a half bed load, they've come to deliver it to my house. And then out at the farm, we're planning on purchasing a large-scale wood chipper so that we can process all of our own materials on our land. And then we use the tree trimmings. You know, I did a big cleanup in the front flower bed yesterday, and all of that material is good for me to actually, not to use necessarily for my footpaths, but to use to build my hugelkultur beds, or you could call it lasagna layering. Now, I don't do what would be called necessarily the back to Eden method, because I don't plant directly in the mulch, because a lot of my mulch is really, really new, young mulch. And we don't have as much mulch down here as in some of the places north where they can do a lot more of that. Like they have a consistent breakdown and they've got layers and layers of mulch on top of things. Our mulch is fairly new when we put it down here. So I use mulch in my footpaths, and then I build my beds up to the hugelkultur style so that I have some of that carbon material. And then of course I can go back to my old mulch where old mulch has been in place, move it around, and find like some of the most beautiful good soil down inside here. This is why my fingernails are always so dirty. So you can see that's kind of, and this is a newish space over here. So, but it's definitely still moist. So that tells you that there's still moisture in my soil down there. And the other thing I wanted to note as it relates to the mold that we saw, or the fungi that we're seeing, mycorrhizal fungi is the Ethernet or algorithm, or whatever you want to call it, of movement that happens underneath the soil, and we require that. Plants require that to get access to the nutrients, the minerals, the different things that they need access to. I always give the example of like, okay, say you've got a pocket of potassium over here for a flowering plant that is looking for the potassium, or you've got a pocket of calcium over here from a calcium deposit of some kind, right? And this plant requires it. How's it going to get from here to here if all the plant has is just some tendrils of roots? How's it going to access that? Well, one of the ways that it accesses it, connects with the mycorrhizal fungi underneath the soil. And the mycorrhizal fungi is like the road, the bank, all of the different parts of movement of things. Now, there are other ways for things to move around. Earthworms help move things around. Ants help move things around. There's all kinds of little insects and things that help us move things around. But one of the most important, and that feeds on the energy from the carbon as a top priority, sucks all of that good sugar out of the carbon, is the mycorrhizal fungi. So carbon is essential, and it is particularly essential in our area. No, that's not even fair to say. It's particularly essential for us to bring it into our area and put it down into our gardens, as opposed to up further north where they've got more trees, where it's going to do that automatically on its own. And sometimes what they're battling with is too much coverage of shade, too much coverage of the ground, for that matter. So a happy medium is kind of bringing it all in together, and it is definitely possible, and it is definitely possible on large scales if you work very much to integrate your garden and create a lot of production in a small space. I can feed certainly my family, just my house with the 2 adults, well, at this point we're almost 4 adults, 2 adults and 2 teenage daughters and some other teenagers that come in and out. If I just use just my small backyard garden, we would have plenty of vegetables to feed us easily. I probably would still have excess. But out at the farm, I'm now growing enough to have an overflow of abundance. And by the way, I did put a form into Aislynn's Overflow of Abundance for today. So if you're interested in ordering some of my delicious, I call them winter greens, hardy greens, beautiful big giant cabbage leaves, Swiss chard, beet greens, all kinds of herbs, every kind of fresh herb you could ever want to use in anything that you're making. I have lots of that stuff in there, and then of course lots of delicious canned goods and stuff like that. If you have any interest in any of the stuff that I'm doing, just send me a DM and I will get back to you and let you know what I can do to help you out. I hope you guys have a fantastic Sunday. It was so good to see you. XO.